2020 in case 001 Dirty Chang Him, case 137 Donald Hoffman, and case 205 Sinna Umbridge.
Thank you. Before we call the first witness, we will note yesterday a number of witnesses didn't turn up, and we believe that that was due to non-service upon them of the letter requesting their appearance, at least in the case of 2 of them. The others we are still investigating. Witnesses today, 2 witnesses will not be appearing. 1 did not receive their witness notification. We're having problems in particular with respect to sending notifications to Pralan. They don't seem to be being served on people, even though they were sent beginning of May or even earlier. And another one, unfortunately, a relative is gravely ill, so they'll be unable to attend today. Can you please call the first witness?
Mr. Terry Bisconi.
Thank you, Mr. Visconet, for appearing before the Commission today. We're grateful to you for appearing. The Commission requested that you appear as a witness in case 137, Donald Hoffman. In his complaint before the Commission, Mr. Hoffman alleged that he purchased land at Ladig, parcel numbers LD 1839, LD 1840, and that he was refused planning permission to develop the land, and he alleges that you informed him that the land could not be developed as the government had declared it to be a reserve, and he claims that when he asked the government to buy the land as they had declared it a reserve, that was refused. So the Commission would be grateful to hear from you what evidence you can in relation to the allegations made by Mr. Hoffman. Thank you. And you're technologically savvy by the looks of it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I have presented to the Commission the files with respect to this case. Before I go into the case itself, I think it would be good if I could enlighten with regards to the procedure that the planning authority goes through.
Sorry, Monsieur Viscone, mon croit en général du moni préféré qui nous cause créole.
I prefer to give my evidence in English, if you don't mind.
You prefer to
yes.
give yours in English?
Because
okay.
I will have, because there are certain words that I will have some problems to.
Okay, that's fine.
I can go much faster in English, if you don't mind. Okay. Okay. Cut my thoughts. Okay. The planning authority is mandated by the Town and Country Planning Act. The Town and Country Planning Act gives the mandate to the planning authority to consider development in the country. And subdivision of land, which is this case in point, constitutes development under the Town and Country Planning Act. So for any development, the applicant must submit a planning application. And this planning application is usually submitted and prepared by qualified persons who are licensed by the Seychelles Licensing Authority. So we have architects, engineers, technicians, draftsmen, surveyors, who submit planning applications to the planning authority. Now, these applications are circulated to the various departments, agencies for their comments and recommendations. Comments and recommendations are required to come back to the planning authority within 14 days. And once these recommendations and comments come back to the planning authority, they are looked at and considered by technical committees. They are analyzed, and the comments are collated by technical committees. And these are subcommittees of the planning authority, the main board of the planning authority.
Can I just ask, when you say various department agencies, who would fit in that category?
Yeah, okay. We would circulate the planning application to environment, health, land transport, and of course it depends where this application is. If it is near an airport, we will circulate it to the airport authorities. If it's, it all depends where the application is. If it is an agricultural thing, we would circulate it to the agricultural authorities. So it all depends where the application is situated, and we will circulate it to those competent authorities. These are looked at when the comments come back. It's analyzed by these technical committees, collated, and these technical committees. There is the main subcommittee of the board. There is the minor works committee, which looks at minor developments, and then there is the utilities committee, which looks at all the utility applications with regards to utilities. And these are usually looked at within 14 days. So these recommendations are then made to the board, who meets every Friday, and the board comprises agencies from health, environment, transport, land use planning, survey, lands, DRDM. The board is made up of private sector. What I've said previously is the subcommittee. So the board is made up of the private sector, environment, land transport, tourism, the ministry, personnel from the ministry, health, heritage, and the CEO is the ex-officio member on the board.
And who appoints the board?
The board is appointed by the minister.
Minister for Land Use and Planning.
Land Use and Planning, yeah. So, and then there is the board secretary, and there are two officers who give technical support to the board. So, as you can see, planning decisions are not unilateral. It is a collective exercise, multi-sectoral consultations. Thus, it cannot be said that I refused.
Right, so because the allegation is you refused,
yeah.
yes, but that's not right.
That's not right, yeah. In this context, I'll just give us a breakdown of how the application was treated. Mr. Hoffman submitted the planning application on the 20th December 2005 by G&M Surveys for the subdivision of land parcels LD 1265, LD 1268, and not the parcels that you have indicated in your letter. I will explain this as we go ahead, because in your letter you say that LD 1839, LD 1840.
What were the numbers? Sorry, I missed them. LD
1265
Yeah.
to LD 1268. So this is the original parcel of land. Okay. The application was processed through the normal procedure as outlined before, and through the consultation stages, and various comments were received. The Environment Department requested on the 9th January 2006 that they could not locate the beacons. The agent G&M Surveys were informed on the 16th January 2006, after the application was considered by the board, that they need to peg out the beacons on the site and contact the Department of Environment for a joint site visit. A reminder was sent again on the 21st of February 2006. On the 27th February 2006, we received confirmation from the agent, G&M Surveys, that they had identified the beacons and visited with the Environment Officer. On the 10th April 2006, the comments was received from the Environment Department recommending refusal as the proposal falls within the verve territory. It will also have adverse visual impact after vegetation or tree clearing. In line with the PA Board's decision of the 26th May 2006, after it had deliberated on the application on the 2nd June 2006, the Planning Authority wrote to the Environment Department requesting it to reassess the proposal with a view to see how the subdivision could be effected so as not to affect the verve territory. On the 22nd June 2006, the Environment Department reviewed its decision on the provisional refusal notice and a compromise to allow the continued coexistence of the verve and development recommended as follows. 1, that 2 plots labeled as Plot 2 are amalgamated to form 1 plot. That 2 plots labeled as Plot 1 are amalgamated to form 1 plot, which should be guarded as the reserve. So 1 plot he can develop and 1 plot as a reserve. Thus, after the Planning Authority Board's deliberation on the 17th July, the agent was informed of the Planning Authority's Board's decision, and only 3 plots will be allowed. That is, the Board, in fact, went further. It looked at the recommendations of Environment, which was recommending 2 plots, but the Board said, no, you can have 2 plots to build and 1 plot in the reserve. So 2 plots indicated as that would remain. The 1 plot would remain in the natural state. The agent, this is G&M Surveys, submitted the substitute plan on the 24th November. In other words, they accepted the decision of the Planning Authority by submitting the substitute plan. That means they accepted the decision. They could have appealed against that decision, but they accepted that decision and complied with the Planning Authority's decision. Submitted the amendments, and there was certain amendments that were also requested with regards to access, and this was submitted again on the 23rd January 2007. The application was finally approved. I repeat, approved. Even though it's partial, it was approved on that basis, on the 26th January 2007, signed by myself. Further content from the file, which I've already given to you, which are in your possession, and this is now because my tenure in the Planning Authority had ceased from then. So we're talking a period that I was not in the Planning Authority. Sorry about that. So the then development, the DG, the Director General of the Department of the Planning Authority at that time received a letter from the Attorney of Law representing Mr. Hoffman, in which he stated that Mr. Hoffman is inconvenienced by the static affairs regarding his plot of land, and that he cannot develop on the land due to it being reserved for ecological reasons, and requested the following: that the restriction is removed so that he may develop his land, or the reservation is maintained and government is informed to purchase the property at market value. The Director General at the time replied on the 29th November 2007 that retaining the land for ecological reasons or reserve was a condition of approval of the subdivision, and there had been no change in the status quo, that his client was aware of the conditions when substitute plans for subdivision was submitted and subsequently approved. With regards to sale of land to government, he was advised to request his client to take the matter directly up with the lands division in the ministry, which would evaluate whether there is interest to purchase same. For some reason, again, on the 6th December 2007, the Director of Quality Assurance reiterated the Planning Authority's stance to the attorney. In addition, advised that he should have appealed, but failed to do so within the required time limit. And again advised that he should make the request to the Lands Department with respect to the issue of the land sale. I note that the attorney did write a formal request to the Principal Secretary of the Ministry of National Development. I will not attempt to give evidence with respect to that because it's not the mandate of the Planning Authority. I will, however, inform the Commission that having been alleged that he did not receive or grant permission for parcel LD1839 and LD1840, thus my initial research took me directly to those two parcels, the reason why I had at that time requested for clarification from the Commission, as these parcels are the result of the subdivision and amalgamation of parcels LD265 and LD268. So the subdivision had already taken place. For that to happen, you needed planning approval because the survey could never take place without planning approval. The Commission should also take note that these parcels have since been sold as from the 15th September 2011 to a Seychellois company for 2.5 million Seychelles rupees. This company submitted a planning application to the Planning Authority on 10th March 2015 for a development, and after going through the normal process, the application was refused by the Planning Authority on the 29th May 2015 by an environmental refusal, which is consistent with the previous decision.
So does that mean, does that company, the planning authority that was given for the two plots to develop them, does the new company automatically buy the land with the two plots allowed to be developed, one plot a reserve, or they have to reapply?
They had to reapply because what they did, they submitted a comprehensive development and the Planning Authority, and this is about 9 years later, so the land use changes over this period of time. So now he has not, Mr. Hoffman had not developed his property. So now the whole property has become sort of ecological reserve. So it would appear that the Environment Authority has taken the stance that that whole area has become an ecological reserve. So this is the reason why they recommended refusal. And in fact, the company did appeal the decision of the Planning Authority, and the decision was maintained on appeal. So the Planning Authority's decision was maintained. So so basically, this is what I wanted to all I have to say on this.
So
issue.
if we sum it up, he actually was given planning approval,
Partial planning
approval to develop part of the land, and he submitted a new.
No, he didn't submit anything.
Oh, he didn't submit anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't submit anything.
What he did is, when he submitted the planning application, the Planning Authority reviewed the planning application and considered only part of the property could be developed. So this is where it granted permission for part of the property, and part of the property would be retained for ecological reasons. So he could have developed at least two parcels of the subdivided property, but he didn't.
Mr. Visconti, I'm just interested to understand, why does it take so long for a project to go through all these hoops and be approved? I mean, in this case, it looks like it started in January 2006 when there were problems with identifying the beacons and so on. And it wasn't until January 2007 that approval was given. Is that normal?
Yeah, I mean, it is normal if everything is not in order, if the application is not in order. So in this case, the application was not in order, because usually when an agent submits a planning application to the planning authority, we ask that all the beacons are made visible, that they are pegged, so that the officers that go on site, when visit the site, they know, they can see, they can easily verify. So in this case, this was not the case. So the agent had to go back, identify all the beacons, which takes time, and then come back to us. And then for the officers to go back on site again to verify. So yeah, it takes time. And again, in this case, the first comments that came from the Environment Department was for complete refusal of the application. And the board said, no, go back and look at it. So this also takes time.
But, you know, it's rather curious, the letter from the lawyers of the 14th of November saying that Mr. Hoffman is much inconvenienced by the static state of affairs regarding his plot of land. At the moment, he's unable to make do with any development on his plot of land because your division has deemed the plot of land as reserved due to ecological reasons. But that's not, and then you write back, not you, Mr. Choppy. The retaining of this site for ecological reasons was a condition of the approval of subdivision, and there's been no change in this stance to date. I mean, that's a little curious. Is he, I don't know, do we infer that he's not, he's referring to the bit, only the bit where planning approval wasn't allowed, or?
I wouldn't say, I couldn't say because I was not there at the time, but I mean, it is very clear, and in fact, his agent, the surveyor, should have advised him that part of his land was developable. He could develop part of his land. And in fact, I think he should have been advised accordingly that he could develop part of his land.
I mean, there was no, it looks like there was no response to that, and then another letter further to that letter saying Planning Authority has approved the subdivision of the parcel LD 1268 into 3 subplots, of which 1 is to be kept as a reserve. This is consistent with the revised subdivision layout submitted by the agent of your client dated 23rd of January 2007. And then he's asked if he wants to sell it to make an offer, but yeah, I mean.
But normally, if there aren't all these kinds of complications and so on, how long does it take for a project to go through the planning authority and get approval or not?
3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I noticed a period of 4th January 2005 when he is requested to peg out the land. And then on the 16th of January 2006, he is again reminded to peg out the land. So that's 1 year gone waiting for the land to be pegged.
Right. Yeah, we have no control on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bisconet, for coming and explaining the chain of events very clearly for us. We really appreciate it. We have no questions for you, unless you have anything you'd like to add.
No, nothing.
Thank you very much for coming. We may see you again one day, but thank you for coming today. And we will adjourn now and return at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
All rise.